The fluorescent lights of the University Archaeological Museum hummed softly overhead as 5-year-old Maya Chen walked hand in hand with her mother through the Egyptian wing. Dr. Sarah Chen, a respected archaeologist specializing in ancient Egyptian civilization, had brought her daughter to work on this particular Tuesday morning when the usual babysitter had fallen ill. The museum was nearly empty at this early hour, with only a few graduate students quietly cataloging artifacts in the distance. Maya's small sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor as they passed display cases filled with ancient pottery, jewelry, and tools. Her dark eyes, unusually serious for a child her age, took in each artifact with an intensity that had always puzzled her mother. While other children her age were fascinated by cartoons and toys, Maya seemed drawn to old things, ancient things, as if they held secrets only she could understand. They rounded a corner and entered the museum's crown jewel exhibit, a perfect-scale replica of the Great Pyramid of Giza, standing nearly 8 feet tall in the center of a circular room. The model was meticulously crafted, showing the pyramid's original smooth limestone casing and golden capstone gleaming under carefully positioned spotlights. Information panels surrounded the display, detailing the accepted theories about how the ancient Egyptians had constructed this wonder of the world using ramps, copper tools, and thousands of workers over decades. The moment Maya's eyes fell upon the pyramid replica, she stopped walking. Her small hand slipped from her mother's grasp as she stood frozen, staring at the limestone structure with an expression that Dr. Chen had never seen on her daughter's face before. It was a look of recognition, of profound sadness, and something else entirely, a weight that seemed far too heavy for such young shoulders to carry. "Maya," Dr. Chen called softly, turning back when she realized her daughter was no longer beside her. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Maya didn't respond. She took 3 slow steps toward the pyramid, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. Her small hands began to tremble, and tears started forming in her eyes. The other visitors in the room, an elderly couple reading about Egyptian burial practices and a young man sketching hieroglyphs, glanced over with mild concern as the little girl's distress became more apparent. "I helped to make this," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, but carrying an odd certainty that made her mother's blood run cold. "It was so heavy. So very heavy." "Doctor," Chen rushed to her daughter's side, kneeling down to Maya's eye level. "What did you say, honey? What do you mean you helped make it?" Maya's tears began flowing freely now, but she continued staring at the pyramid with that same haunting recognition. "The stones. We had to move the stones. My back hurt so much and the sun was so hot. Kemwaset. That was my name. I was Kemwaset. And I carried the stones that flew in the water." The word sent a chill down Dr. Chen's spine. Kemwaset was indeed an ancient Egyptian name, one that her 5-year-old daughter should have no knowledge of. More disturbing still was Maya's reference to stones that flew in the water, a description that made no sense according to any accepted theory of pyramid construction. "Maya, where did you hear that name?" Dr. Chen asked gently, trying to keep her voice calm despite the growing alarm she felt. "Did someone tell you about Kemwaset?" Maya shook her head, never taking her eyes off the pyramid. "No one told me. I remember the ramps that went around and around inside, like a spiral staircase but for the big stones, and the water. We used so much water. The stones would float, and we could push them easier." Dr. Chen felt her archaeological training kick in even as maternal concern flooded her system. What Maya was describing, internal ramps and some kind of flotation system, were theories that had been proposed by only a handful of researchers and were certainly not common knowledge. They definitely weren't the kind of information a kindergartner would encounter in picture books or children's documentaries. "Can you tell me more about the water, Maya?" Dr. Chen asked, pulling out her phone to record what her daughter was saying. "How did the stones float?" Maya finally looked away from the pyramid to meet her mother's eyes. In that moment, Dr. Chen saw something that made her heart skip a beat. Her daughter's usual bright, innocent expression was gone, replaced by the weary, knowing gaze of someone who had lived through tremendous hardship. It was as if she was looking at a stranger wearing her child's face. "We dug channels," Maya said with the matter-of-fact tone of someone recounting a work shift rather than a 5-year-old playing pretend. "Deep channels filled with water from the river. The big stones, the ones that weighed as much as many men, they would rest on wooden boats. The boats would float in the channels, and we could guide them where they needed to go. It was easier than dragging them across the sand." Dr. Chen's hands were shaking now as she held her phone. Maya was describing a hydraulic system for moving massive stone blocks, a theory that had been proposed by a few engineers and archaeologists but never proven. The level of detail in her description was far beyond what any child should know, and the way she spoke about it with such casual familiarity was deeply unsettling. "Maya, how old were you when Kayamwaset did this work?" Dr. Chen asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. "I started when I was very young, maybe 8 summers," Maya replied, using terminology that no modern child would naturally employ. "I died when I had seen 16 summers. A stone fell. It was very quick." The casual way Maya spoke about death, her own death in what she clearly believed was a previous life, made Dr. Chen's stomach lurch. She looked around the museum, suddenly feeling as though the walls were closing in. The elderly couple had moved on to another exhibit, but the young man with the sketchbook was now openly staring at them, his pencil frozen in his hand. "Mama, why are you scared?" Maya asked, her voice returning to its normal childlike quality for a moment. "I'm not hurt anymore. That was a long time ago." Before Dr. Chen could respond, Maya turned back to the pyramid and began walking around it slowly, studying it from every angle. As she moved, she started pointing at specific areas of the model and speaking in that same unnaturally mature voice. "The entrance they show here is wrong," Maya said, indicating the tourist entrance that had been cut into the pyramid centuries after its construction. "The real entrance was hidden. We sealed it with stones that looked exactly like the others, but they could be moved if you knew the secret. And inside..." She paused, pressing her small hand against the model's surface. Inside, there were more passages than they know about. Passages that went down, deep down, to where we kept the heart of the pyramid. "The heart of the pyramid?" Dr. Chen repeated, her archaeological instincts now fully engaged despite her maternal fears. "What do you mean by that?" Maya looked up at her mother with those ancient eyes again. "The machine that made it all work, the thing that helped us lift the stones and move them into place. It's still there, waiting. Everything we built around it." At that moment, a new voice interrupted their conversation. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing." Dr. Chen turned to see a tall, distinguished man in his 50s approaching them. He had salt and pepper hair, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who spent more time thinking about ancient civilizations than modern fashion. She recognized him immediately as Professor Michael Torres, one of the world's leading experts on Egyptian pyramid construction, and a colleague she had met at several archaeological conferences. "Professor Torres," Dr. Chen said, standing up while keeping one hand protectively on Maya's shoulder. "I didn't know you were in town." "I'm here for a consultation with the museum about their new exhibit," Professor Torres explained, but his attention was clearly focused on Maya. "I apologize for eavesdropping, but what your daughter was saying about internal ramps and hydraulic systems, those are very specific theories that most professional archaeologists aren't familiar with." "Where did she learn about them?" Dr. Chen felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I honestly don't know. She's never shown any particular interest in Egyptian history before today, and she certainly hasn't been exposed to advanced archaeological theories." Professor Torres crouched down to Maya's level, his expression gentle but intensely curious. "Hello there. My name is Michael. I study pyramids just like this one. Can you tell me more about these passages you mentioned? The ones that go deep down? Maya studied Professor Torres for a long moment, as if evaluating whether he could be trusted with important information. Finally, she nodded and turned back to the pyramid model. There are 3 main passages that they know about, Maya said, pointing to areas of the model that corresponded to the known internal structure of the Great Pyramid. But there are 7 more that they haven't found yet. 4 go up, toward the top, and 3 go down, deep into the bedrock. The deepest one goes down as far as the pyramid is tall. Professor Torres's eyebrows shot up. The idea of undiscovered passages in the Great Pyramid was not new. Various scanning technologies had suggested the possibility of hidden chambers. But Maya's specific description of 7 additional passages with precise directional orientations was remarkably detailed. "And you said there was a machine down there?" Professor Torres asked. "Can you describe what it looked like?" Maya closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to recall a distant memory. When she opened them again, that ancient weariness had returned to her expression. It was made of the same stone as the pyramid, but it was carved with symbols that glowed with their own light. Not firelight, not sunlight, but light that came from within the stone itself. It had wheels and gears, but they were made of stone too, and they moved without anyone turning them. The water flowed through it, and somehow that made the stones lighter. I don't understand how it worked, but I saw it work. Professor Torres and Dr. Chen exchanged glances over Maya's head. What the child was describing sounded like some kind of advanced technology, but technology that supposedly existed over 4,000 years ago. It was the stuff of science fiction, not archaeological reality. "Maya," Professor Torres said carefully, "do you think you could draw this machine for me? Or maybe draw a map of where these hidden passages are?" Maya nodded eagerly, seeming to return to her normal 5-year-old enthusiasm for a moment. "I can draw it. I remember everything. But..." Her expression grew serious again. "You have to promise to be careful. The people who built the pyramid, they hid these things for a reason. They didn't want just anyone to find them." Dr. Chen felt a chill run down her spine at her daughter's words. The way Maya spoke about the people who built the pyramid, as if she had known them personally, as if she had been one of them, was deeply unsettling. But at the same time, her archaeological training was screaming that this could be the discovery of a lifetime. If even a fraction of what Maya was saying was true, it could revolutionize everything they thought they knew about ancient Egyptian engineering capabilities. Professor Torres seemed to be having similar thoughts. "I tell you what," he said to Maya. "Why don't we go to my office here at the museum? I have paper and colored pencils, and you can draw everything you remember. Would you like that?" Maya looked up at her mother for permission. Dr. Chen hesitated, torn between her desire to protect her daughter and her burning curiosity about what Maya might reveal. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but I'm staying with you the whole time," Dr. Chen said firmly. As they walked through the museum toward Professor Torres's temporary office, Maya continued to point out inaccuracies in the various Egyptian exhibits. She corrected the positioning of tools in a display about daily life in ancient Egypt, mentioned that the colors used in a reproduction of tomb paintings were too bright, the real ones were more faded, and stopped in front of a display of canopic jars to say that they were missing the most important jar, the one that held the memories. If this video reached you, it is because something in it is meant for you. Leave a like, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming, and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there now. Continuing here. Professor Torres's office was a cluttered space filled with books, papers, and artifacts from various archaeological sites. He cleared a space on his desk and provided Maya with a large sheet of white paper and a box of colored pencils. Dr. Chen sat in a chair beside her daughter, still recording everything on her phone, while Professor Torres positioned himself across the desk, where he could observe Maya's drawing process. "Okay, Maya," Professor Torres said gently. "Can you start by drawing the pyramid as you remember it?" Show me where these hidden passages are." Maya picked up a brown pencil and began drawing with a confidence and precision that was startling for a child her age. Her lines were steady and purposeful, and she seemed to have a clear mental image of exactly what she wanted to create. She started with the familiar triangular outline of the pyramid, but then began adding details that made both adults lean forward in fascination. Instead of the simple internal structure shown in textbooks, the ascending passage, the grand gallery, and the king's chamber, Maya drew a complex network of interconnected passages that spiraled through the pyramid like a three-dimensional maze. Some passages curved upward in gentle arcs, while others plunged straight down into the bedrock beneath the pyramid's base. "This passage here," Maya said, pointing to a curving line that seemed to spiral around the pyramid's interior. "This is how we moved the biggest stones. The ramp went around and around, getting higher with each turn. The stones rode on wooden rollers, and we used ropes and pulleys to guide them." She switched to a blue pencil and began adding what appeared to be water channels throughout the structure. The water came from the river through underground channels. "It filled these spaces here and here," she said, coloring in several areas of her drawing. When the stones were on their wooden boats, they could float through these channels to exactly where they needed to go. Professor Torres was taking notes frantically, trying to capture every detail of Maya's explanation. What she was describing was a sophisticated hydraulic engineering system that would have been remarkable even by modern standards, let alone for a civilization that supposedly relied on copper tools and human labor. "And the machine?" Dr. Chen asked. "Can you show us where that was?" Maya nodded and switched to a black pencil. At the very bottom of her drawing, far below the pyramid's base, she drew what appeared to be a large circular chamber. Inside this chamber, she sketched a complex geometric pattern that looked like a combination of gears, wheels, and flowing water. "The heart of the pyramid was here," Maya said, tapping the drawing with her pencil. Everything else was built around it. The machine made the water flow in special ways, and somehow that made the stones lighter. "I don't know how it worked, but I saw it work many times." She paused in her drawing and looked up at Professor Torres with those unnaturally mature eyes. "The builders, the real builders, they weren't from Egypt. They came from somewhere else, somewhere far away. They taught us how to cut the stones and how to use the machine. But they made us promise to keep it secret. They said that if the wrong people found it, they could use it to hurt others." Professor Torres felt his heart racing. Maya was describing what sounded like an advanced civilization that had somehow been involved in the construction of the pyramids, a theory that was considered fringe archaeology at best and complete fantasy at worst. But the level of detail in her account, combined with the technical sophistication of the engineering concepts she was describing, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Maya," he said carefully, "these builders from far away, do you remember what they looked like? How they were different from the Egyptian workers?" Maya nodded and picked up a yellow pencil. She began drawing figures around the pyramid, some clearly representing the Egyptian workers she claimed to have been one of, and others that were distinctly different. The foreign builders in her drawing were taller, with elongated features, and what appeared to be more advanced clothing or equipment. "They were very tall," Maya said as she drew. "Taller than any of us. And their skin was different. Not dark like ours, but not light like the people from the north either. It was like the color of sand when the sun shines on it, and their eyes were very bright, like they had light inside them." She continued drawing, adding details that made Dr. Chen's hands shake as she held her phone. Maya was depicting what appeared to be advanced tools and equipment that the foreign builders used, devices that looked nothing like the copper chisels and wooden levers that archaeologists believed were the primary tools of pyramid construction. "They had tools that could cut stone like it was soft clay," Maya continued. "And they could make heavy things light just by touching them with these special rods. But they only used these tools for the most important work. Most of the time, we had to use our hands and backs and the water system. Professor Torres was struggling to maintain his scientific skepticism in the face of Maya's incredibly detailed and consistent account. Everything she was saying contradicted, accepted archaeological theory, but it was internally consistent and technically sophisticated in ways that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old to fabricate. "Maya," he said, "you mentioned that you died when you were 16. Do you remember what happened after that? How you came to be here now?" Maya set down her pencil and looked thoughtful for a moment. "I remember floating above my body for a while, watching the other workers carry me away. Then there was a long time of nothing. Like sleeping, but deeper than sleeping. And then I was here, in this body, with this family." She looked at her mother with genuine affection. "I like this life better. No one makes me carry heavy stones, and there's so much food." The simple, childlike way she said this last part, about liking having enough food, broke Dr. Chen's heart. Whether or not Maya's memories were real, the emotions behind them certainly seemed to be. The child was describing a life of hard physical labor, inadequate nutrition, and early death with the matter-of-fact acceptance of someone who had actually lived through such hardships. "Maya," Dr. Chen said gently, "do you remember anything else about your life as Kemwaset? Your family, your friends, what you did when you weren't working on the pyramid?" Maya's expression grew sad. "I had a sister, Nefertiti. She was younger than me, maybe 12 summers when I died. She worked in the kitchens, preparing food for the workers. And my mother, Enka, she wove cloth for the priests. My father died in a quarry accident when I was very small." She picked up her pencil again and began adding more details to her drawing. "We lived in a village near the pyramid site. The houses were made of mud bricks, and they were very small. Many families lived together in each house. At night, we would sit outside and look at the stars, and the old men would tell stories about the gods and the pharaoh." As Maya continued to draw and talk, Professor Torres found himself becoming more and more convinced that something extraordinary was happening. The child's knowledge of ancient Egyptian daily life, construction techniques, and social structures was far too detailed and accurate to be the product of imagination or half-remembered children's books. But accepting that Maya actually possessed memories from a past life would require him to abandon everything he thought he knew about the nature of consciousness and reality. "Professor Torres," Dr. Chen said quietly, "what do you think we should do? I mean, if even a small part of what Maya is saying is true." Professor Torres nodded, understanding the implications. If Maya's memories were accurate, they could be sitting on the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. But how could they possibly verify the claims of a 5-year-old who insisted she had lived and died over 4,000 years ago? "I think," Professor Torres said carefully, "we need to bring in some additional expertise. I know a colleague, Dr. Elena Vasquez, who specializes in cases like this. She's a psychologist who has studied children who claim to remember past lives. She might be able to help us understand what's happening here." Maya looked up from her drawing, which now covered the entire sheet of paper with an incredibly detailed cross-section of the pyramid and its surrounding structures. "Will she believe me?" Maya asked. "Most grown-ups think children don't know anything important." Professor Torres smiled at her. "Dr. Vasquez is different. She listens to children very carefully, and she's helped other kids who have had experiences like yours. I think you'll like her." Maya nodded and returned to her drawing, adding final touches to what appeared to be a map of the entire Giza complex as it existed during the pyramid's construction. Her version showed not just the 3 famous pyramids, but additional structures that had never been discovered. Smaller pyramids, underground complexes, and what appeared to be an elaborate system of canals connecting the site to the Nile River. "Maya," Dr. Chen said, "can you tell us more about these other buildings you're drawing? The ones that aren't there anymore?" Maya pointed to various parts of her map. "These were workshops where we prepared the stones, and these were living quarters for the foreign builders. They were much nicer than where we lived. And this," she pointed to a large rectangular structure near the river, This was where they kept the boats that brought the stones from the quarries. She paused and looked up at both adults with an expression of sudden urgency. But the most important thing is still there, underground. The heart of the pyramid, the machine that made it all possible. It's waiting for someone to find it. Someone who understands that it was meant to help people, not hurt them. Professor Torres felt a chill run down his spine at Maya's words. The way she spoke about this mysterious machine with such conviction, as if she had personally seen it in operation, was deeply unsettling. But at the same time, his archaeological instincts were screaming that this could be the discovery that would redefine human history. "Maya," he said, "if this machine is still there, do you think you could help us find it? Could you show us where to look?" Maya nodded solemnly. "I think so, but we have to be very careful. The foreign builders put protections in place, ways to keep people out who shouldn't be there. And..." She hesitated, looking uncertain for the first time since she had started talking about her memories. "What is it, sweetheart?" Dr. Chen asked. "I'm starting to forget," Maya said quietly. "The memories are getting fuzzy, like when you try to remember a dream after you wake up. I think maybe I'm only supposed to remember long enough to tell someone who can do something about it." The urgency in Maya's voice galvanized both adults into action. If the child's memories were indeed fading, they needed to document everything she could recall while it was still clear in her mind. "Maya," Professor Torres said, "I'm going to call Dr. Vasquez right now. Can you stay here with your mother and keep drawing? Try to put down everything you can remember, even if it seems unimportant." Maya nodded and picked up her pencils again, but Dr. Chen could see that her daughter's movements were becoming less certain, less confident than they had been just minutes before. It was as if the ancient knowledge that had possessed her was slowly draining away, leaving behind a confused 5-year-old who didn't quite understand what was happening to her. As Professor Torres stepped out of the office to make his phone call, Dr. Chen pulled her chair closer to her daughter and wrapped an arm around her small shoulders. "Maya," she said softly, "are you okay? Are you scared?" Maya leaned into her mother's embrace, and for a moment she was just a little girl again, seeking comfort from the person she trusted most in the world. "I'm not scared, Mama," Maya said. "But I'm sad. Camwaset had a hard life, but he was proud of the work he did. He helped build something that would last forever, something that would make people wonder and dream for thousands of years. I think maybe that's why I remember, so that people will know that it wasn't just the pharaoh and the priests who built the pyramid. It was also people like Camwaset, people who worked hard and died young, but who were part of something bigger than themselves." Dr. Chen felt tears welling up in her eyes at her daughter's words. Whether Maya's memories were real or not, the wisdom and compassion in her voice were undeniably genuine. This little girl, who just hours ago had been concerned with nothing more complex than which cartoon to watch, was now speaking about legacy, sacrifice, and the meaning of human achievement with a depth that took Dr. Chen's breath away. Professor Torres returned to the office, his expression a mixture of excitement and concern. "Doctor, Vasquez can be here in 2 hours," he announced. "She's canceling her other appointments because she says this case sounds unlike anything she's encountered before." Maya looked up from her drawing, which now included detailed sketches of tools, hieroglyphic symbols, and what appeared to be architectural plans for structures that had never been discovered. "Will she help us find the heart of the pyramid?" Maya asked. Professor Torres knelt down beside her chair. "Maya, I want you to understand something. Even if we believe everything you're telling us, actually finding this machine you're describing would be incredibly difficult. The Egyptian government is very protective of the pyramid sites, and getting permission to excavate would take years, if it's even possible at all." Maya's expression grew sad, but she nodded with understanding beyond her years. "I know, but maybe just knowing it's there is enough for now. Maybe someday, When the time is right, someone will find it. The foreign builders. They said that everything happens when it's supposed to happen. As they waited for Dr. Vasquez to arrive, Maya continued to draw and talk, sharing details about daily life in ancient Egypt that were so specific and accurate that Professor Torres found himself taking notes as if he were interviewing a primary historical source. She described the taste of bread made from emmer wheat, the sound of copper chisels striking limestone, the smell of the Nile during flood season, and dozens of other sensory details that brought the ancient world to life in ways that no textbook ever could. But even as she spoke, Dr. Chen could see that her daughter's memories were indeed fading. Maya began to hesitate more frequently, searching for words that had come easily just an hour before. The ancient wisdom in her eyes was gradually being replaced by the normal confusion and wonder of a 5-year-old trying to understand something far beyond her comprehension. "Mama," Maya said quietly as she put down her pencils. "I think Kamwaset is going to sleep now. He's tired, and he's ready to rest. But he wanted me to tell you something important." Chen leaned closer to her daughter. "What is it, sweetheart?" Maya looked directly into her mother's eyes with an intensity that made Dr. Chen's heart skip a beat. "He says that the pyramid was never meant to be a tomb. It was meant to be a gift to the future, to people like you who would come thousands of years later and wonder how it was built. The foreign builders knew that someday, people would have the tools to understand what they had created. They built it as a message, a way of saying that even in the ancient world, there were people who could do impossible things when they worked together." Maya's voice was growing softer now, more childlike, as if the adult consciousness that had been speaking through her was gradually withdrawing. "And he says," Maya continued, "that the most important thing isn't the machine or the secret passages, or any of the things I drew. The most important thing is remembering that every great achievement in history was built by ordinary people doing extraordinary things. People like Kamwaset, who carried stones until his back broke and who died young, but who never stopped believing that he was part of something magnificent." With those words, Maya seemed to deflate slightly, as if a great weight had been lifted from her small shoulders. She looked around Professor Torres's office with the confused expression of a child who wasn't quite sure how she had gotten there or what she had been doing. "Mama," she said in her normal 5-year-old voice, "can we go home now? I'm tired, and I want to play with my dolls." Dr. Chen felt her heart break a little at the return of her daughter's normal childhood concerns. The ancient soul who had been speaking through Maya was gone, leaving behind a little girl who just wanted the comfort of familiar toys and routines. "Of course, sweetheart," Dr. Chen said, gathering up the drawings that Maya had created. "We'll go home soon." Professor Torres looked at the papers in Dr. Chen's hands with a mixture of awe and frustration. In the span of just a few hours, a 5-year-old girl had potentially provided more insight into the construction of the Great Pyramid than decades of archaeological research. But now that same little girl was asking for her dolls, apparently unaware of the revolutionary information she had just shared. "Dr. Chen," Professor Torres said quietly, "I hope you understand the significance of what just happened here. Regardless of how we explain it, whether Maya somehow accessed genetic memories, past life experiences, or some other phenomenon we don't understand, the information she provided could change everything we think we know about ancient Egyptian civilization." Dr. Chen nodded, still trying to process everything that had occurred. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Professor Torres said, "we wait for Dr. Vasquez to arrive and see what she makes of all this. And then, if she agrees that Maya's account is worth investigating, we figure out how to convince the archaeological community that a 5-year-old girl may have solved one of history's greatest mysteries." As they prepared to leave the office, Maya tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama," she said, "I had the strangest dream while we were here. I dreamed I was a boy who helped build a pyramid. Isn't that silly?" Dr. Chen looked down at her daughter's innocent face and felt a chill run through her. Maya had no conscious memory of the past few hours, no recollection of the detailed drawings she had created, or the ancient knowledge she had shared. It was as if Kamwaset had borrowed her voice just long enough to tell his story, and then had faded back into whatever realm holds the memories of the long dead. "Yes, sweetheart," Dr. Chen said softly. "That was quite a dream." Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at the museum exactly 2 hours after Professor Torres's phone call, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing the focused expression of someone who had spent years studying the impossible. She was a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her reputation in the field of childhood psychology, particularly in cases involving claimed past life memories, had made her one of the most sought-after experts in what was still considered a fringe area of research. Professor Torres met her at the museum entrance and quickly briefed her on the morning's events as they walked toward his office. Dr. Vasquez listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking for clarification about specific details Maya had provided. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but Professor Torres could see the spark of intense interest in her eyes. "Before I meet with Maya," Dr. Vasquez said as they paused outside the office door, "I need you to understand my approach. I don't go into these sessions trying to prove or disprove anything. My job is to document what the child says and does, look for patterns and consistencies, and help determine whether we're dealing with genuine anomalous memories, cryptomnesia, fantasy, or something else entirely." Professor Torres nodded. "Of course. We just want to understand what's happening here." Dr. Vasquez opened her briefcase and pulled out a small digital recorder and a notebook. "I'll need to record our session, and I may ask Maya to undergo some simple tests. Nothing invasive or frightening, just ways to verify the consistency of her memories and check for knowledge she shouldn't possess." When they entered the office, they found Maya sitting on the floor, playing with a small toy car that Professor Torres kept on his desk for visiting children. She looked up when they entered, her expression bright and curious but showing no sign of the ancient wisdom that had possessed her earlier. "Maya," Dr. Chen said gently, "this is Dr. Vasquez. She's here to talk with you about your dream." Dr. Vasquez knelt down to Maya's level, her manner warm and non-threatening. "Hello, Maya. Your mother told me you had a very interesting dream today. Would you like to tell me about it?" Maya tilted her head thoughtfully. "It wasn't really a dream, I think. It felt more real than dreams usually do. I was a boy named..." She paused, her brow furrowing with concentration. "I can't remember his name now, but he lived a long time ago and helped build something very big." Dr. Vasquez made a note in her notebook. "Can you remember anything else about this boy? What he looked like, where he lived?" Maya closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to recall something that was slipping away. "He was thin, and his skin was dark from working in the sun. His hands were rough and hurt all the time from carrying heavy things. And he was always hungry. There was never enough food." As Maya spoke, Dr. Vasquez noticed that the child's posture and manner of speaking began to change subtly. Her voice took on a slightly different cadence, and she seemed to be accessing memories rather than imagining scenarios. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said carefully, "can you tell me about the heavy things this boy had to carry?" "Stones," Maya replied without hesitation. "Huge stones that took many men to move. But we had a special way of moving them that made them lighter. We used water, lots of water, and the stones would float like boats." Vasquez exchanged a glance with Professor Torres. Maya was once again describing the hydraulic system she had detailed earlier, but this time her description was less detailed, as if the memories were indeed fading. "Can you show me how the stones floated?" Dr. Vasquez asked, pulling out a piece of paper and some crayons. Maya took the crayons eagerly and began to draw, but her movements were less confident than they had been during her earlier session with Professor Torres. She sketched what appeared to be a stone block resting on a wooden platform, surrounded by water, but the details were simpler and less precise than her previous drawings. "Like this," Maya said, pointing to her drawing. "The wood would float, and the stone would sit on the wood. Then we could push it where it needed to go." Dr. Vasquez made more notes, observing that while Maya's current description was consistent with her earlier account, it lacked the sophisticated technical details she had provided just hours before. It was as if she was remembering a memory of a memory, with each recollection becoming less vivid. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez continued, "do you remember what this boy's job was? What he did every day?" Maya's expression grew thoughtful again. "He carried stones from the river to the big pyramid, every day from when the sun came up until it went down. His back hurt and his feet hurt, but he was proud of the work. He knew he was helping to build something that would last forever." Dr. Chalper. Vasquez noted the shift from third person to first person in Maya's description, a common pattern in children who claimed past life memories. "Can you tell me about the pyramid? What did it look like when this boy was working on it?" "It was only half finished," Maya said, her voice taking on that distant quality again. "The bottom part was done, but the top was still being built. There were ramps everywhere, going up and around, and lots of workers carrying stones and tools, and there was so much noise, people shouting, tools hitting stone, ropes creaking." She paused and looked directly at Dr. Vasquez with an intensity that made the psychologist's breath catch. But the most amazing thing was the machine at the bottom. Deep underground, there was a machine made of stone that could make heavy things light. I only saw it once, when I was chosen to help carry water down to it, but I'll never forget it. Dr. Vasquez felt her pulse quicken. "Can you describe this machine, Maya?" Maya picked up her crayons again and began drawing on a fresh piece of paper. This time her movements were more confident, as if this particular memory was clearer than the others. She drew what appeared to be a circular chamber, with a complex geometric pattern in the center. It was round, like a big room, and in the middle there was something that looked like a wheel made of stone. But the wheel had other wheels inside it, and they all moved, even though no one was turning them. And there was water flowing through channels carved in the floor, and somehow the water made the stone wheels turn. Dr. Vasquez studied Maya's drawing carefully. The child was describing what sounded like some kind of ancient mechanical device, possibly water-powered, that allegedly had the ability to reduce the weight of stone blocks. From a scientific standpoint, it was impossible, but from an archaeological standpoint, it was fascinating. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said, "this machine that made stones lighter, do you remember how it worked? What made it special?" Maya shook her head slowly. "I was just a worker. The foreign builders never explained things to us. They just told us what to do and where to carry things. But I could see that when stones went near the machine, they became easier to lift. It was like magic, but the foreign builders said it wasn't magic. They said it was knowledge." Dr. Vasquez made a note about Maya's reference to foreign builders, another detail that had appeared in her earlier account. "Can you tell me about these foreign builders? What made them different?" "They were much taller than us, and they had strange tools that could cut stone like it was soft mud. And they knew things that we didn't know. How to make the machine work, how to cut the stones so perfectly that they fit together without any gaps, how to move blocks that were heavier than anything we could normally lift." Maya's voice was becoming softer now, more uncertain. "But they were kind to us. They made sure we had enough water to drink, and they never hit us or shouted at us like some of the Egyptian overseers did. They said we were all working together to build something important, something that would teach people in the future about what could be accomplished when everyone worked toward the same goal." Dr. Vasquez continued to take notes, documenting not just what Maya said, but how she said it. The child's manner of speaking about these foreign builders was markedly different from how she described the Egyptian workers. There was a sense of respect and admiration in her voice, that seemed genuine and deeply felt. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said, "do you remember what happened to this boy? How his story ended?" Maya's expression grew sad, and she set down her crayons. "A stone fell. We were moving a very big block up one of the ramps, and something went wrong with the ropes. The stone rolled back down and—" She trailed off, looking confused. "I remember being above, looking down at everyone running around, but I wasn't scared anymore. I felt peaceful." Dr. Vasquez noted that Maya was once again describing what sounded like an out-of-body experience following traumatic death, another common element in past life memory cases. "And after that, do you remember what happened next?" "It's fuzzy," Maya said, rubbing her eyes as if she was tired. "There was a long time of floating, of being nowhere and everywhere at the same time. And then I was here, in this body, with this family." She looked at her mother with genuine affection. "I like this life much better. No one makes me work until I'm too tired to stand up." Dr. Vasquez spent the next hour conducting a series of simple tests with Maya, showing her photographs of ancient Egyptian artifacts and asking her to identify them or explain their use. Maya's responses were inconsistent. Sometimes she would demonstrate knowledge that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old, correctly identifying obscure tools or explaining the purpose of ritual objects. Other times, she would look at common artifacts with complete bewilderment, as if seeing them for the first time. The pattern that emerged was intriguing. Maya seemed to have detailed knowledge only of things that would have been familiar to a young laborer working on pyramid construction. She could describe the daily routine of workers, the types of food they ate, and the tools they used. But she knew nothing about royal burial practices, religious ceremonies, or other aspects of ancient Egyptian culture that would have been outside the experience of someone in her claimed social position. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said as the session was winding down, "is there anything else you think is important for us to know? Anything else you remember about the boy's life or about the pyramid?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, staring at the drawings she had created. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "The foreign builders made us promise something before they left. They said that someday, people would come who had the tools to understand what we had built. They said these future people would be able to find the machine and learn from it, but only if they approached it with the right intentions." She looked up at Dr. Vasquez with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "They said the machine was never meant to be a weapon or a way to gain power over others. It was meant to be a gift, a way of showing that even ancient people could accomplish impossible things when they worked together and shared their knowledge." Dr. Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine at Maya's words. Whether the child's memories were real or not, the message she was conveying had a profound emotional impact. The idea that ancient builders had deliberately created something as a gift to future generations, trusting that humanity would eventually develop the wisdom to use it properly, was both beautiful and deeply moving. "Maya," Dr. Vasquez said gently, "do you think this machine is still there? Still waiting to be found?" Maya nodded solemnly. "It's still there. The foreign builders made it out of the same stone as the pyramid, so it will last as long as the pyramid does. But finding it—" She shook her head. "That will be very difficult. The passages that lead to it are hidden, and there are protections in place to keep out people who might misuse what they find." Dr. Vasquez closed her notebook and turned off her recorder. She had documented dozens of cases of children claiming past life memories, but Maya's account was unlike anything she had encountered before. The level of technical detail, the consistency of the narrative, and the child's emotional connection to the memories all suggested something far more complex than simple fantasy or imagination. "Dr. Chen," Dr. Vasquez said, turning to Maya's mother, "I'd like to schedule some follow-up sessions with Maya over the next few weeks. In my experience, these types of memories often fade quickly, but sometimes additional details emerge if we approach them from different angles." Dr. Chen nodded, though she looked exhausted by the day's events. Of course, but I have to ask, do you think Maya's memories could be real? Is it possible that she actually lived before as this boy Camwaset? Dr. Vasquez chose her words carefully. I've studied hundreds of cases like this, and I've learned not to make definitive statements about what's possible and what isn't. What I can tell you is that Maya's account has several characteristics that distinguish it from typical childhood fantasy. The consistency of her narrative, the specific technical knowledge she's demonstrated, and the way her memories seem to be fading over time are all patterns I've seen in cases that prove to have verifiable elements. She paused, looking at Maya, who was now playing quietly with her toy car again, apparently oblivious to the adult conversation happening around her. Whether we're dealing with genuine past life memories, some form of genetic memory, or a psychological phenomenon we don't yet understand, Maya has provided information that could be archaeologically significant. The question now is whether we can find a way to test her claims. Professor Torres, who had been listening quietly throughout the session, finally spoke up. I've been thinking about that. Maya's drawings show the locations of several hidden chambers and passages within the Great Pyramid. Some of these locations could potentially be verified using ground-penetrating radar or other non-invasive scanning techniques. Dr. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. You're thinking of actually testing her claims? I'm thinking, Professor Torres said carefully, that we have a responsibility to investigate. If Maya's memories are accurate, we could be looking at the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. And if they're not, we'll have learned something valuable about the nature of childhood psychology and memory. Dr. Chen looked between the two experts, feeling overwhelmed by the implications of what they were discussing. But what about Maya? What about protecting her from all this attention and pressure? Dr. Vasquez nodded understandingly. That's my primary concern as well. Maya is just a child, and her well-being has to come first. Any investigation would need to be conducted in a way that protects her privacy and doesn't put undue pressure on her. Maya looked up from her toy car, apparently sensing that the adults were talking about her. Are you going to look for the machine? She asked with the innocent curiosity of a 5-year-old. Professor Torres knelt down beside her. Would you like us to look for it, Maya? Maya considered this question seriously. I think Camwaset would like that. He was proud of the work he did, and he would want people to know that the pyramid wasn't just built by kings and priests. It was built by ordinary people who did extraordinary things. She paused and looked at each of the adults in turn. But you have to promise to be careful. The foreign builders put the machine there for a reason, and they trusted that someday the right people would find it. You have to make sure you're the right people. With those words, Maya returned to playing with her toy car, leaving the 3 adults to contemplate the weight of responsibility she had just placed on their shoulders. Whether her memories were real or not, the message was clear. If they chose to pursue this investigation, they would be taking on the role of guardians for knowledge that could change the world. 3 weeks after Maya's initial revelation at the museum, Professor Torres found himself standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid of Giza, holding a tablet, displaying ground-penetrating radar results that defied everything he thought he knew about the ancient structure. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities had granted him a limited research permit after he presented Maya's drawings alongside preliminary scans that suggested the presence of previously unknown voids within the pyramid. Dr. Vasquez stood beside him, reviewing her notes from multiple sessions with Maya over the past weeks. The child's memories had indeed continued to fade, but not before she had provided additional details that proved startlingly accurate when cross-referenced with historical records and archaeological evidence. Most remarkably, Maya had described the location of a workers' village that had only been discovered by archaeologists in the 1990s, providing details about its layout that matched excavation findings with uncanny precision. Dr. Chen watched nervously as the research team prepared their equipment. Maya had insisted on coming to Egypt, claiming that being near the pyramid might help her remember more clearly. The 5-year-old now sat on a folding chair in the shade of a portable canopy, drawing pictures of what she called the old days, while the adults worked around her. "The radar confirms it," Professor Torres announced to the assembled team. "There are definitely voids where Maya indicated there should be passages. The largest one appears to be approximately 30 meters below the pyramid's base, exactly where she drew the chamber containing what she calls the heart of the pyramid." Dr. Ahmed Hassan, the Egyptian archaeologist assigned to oversee their work, studied the radar results with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. "These readings are extraordinary, but we must proceed with extreme caution. The pyramid is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and any excavation must be conducted with the utmost care for preservation." Maya looked up from her drawing and walked over to the group of adults. "You don't need to dig," she said matter-of-factly. "There's another way in. The foreign builders made a hidden entrance that doesn't damage the pyramid." Professor Torres knelt down to Maya's level. "Can you show us where this entrance is?" Maya nodded and pointed toward the north face of the pyramid, but not at the known entrance that tourists used. Instead, she indicated a section of the structure that appeared completely solid to the naked eye. "It's there, but you can't see it because it's designed to look like all the other stones. You have to press on 3 specific blocks in the right order, and then a section will slide inward." Dr. Hassan frowned. "Maya, we've examined every stone on the pyramid's exterior. There's no evidence of any hidden mechanism." Maya shrugged, with the casual confidence of a child who knew she was right. "The foreign builders were very clever. They made it so that only someone who knew the secret could find it. But I remember watching them test it before they sealed it for the last time." Dr. Vasquez had been documenting every word of this exchange, and she noticed something significant. "Maya, you said you watched them seal it for the last time. Does that mean you saw the foreign builders leave?" Maya's expression grew sad. "Yes. They finished teaching us how to complete the pyramid, and then they went away. They said their work here was done, and they had to go help other people in other places. But they promised that someday, when the time was right, people would come who could understand what they had built." She looked around at the assembled team of archaeologists, engineers, and researchers. "I think maybe you're those people." Professor Torres felt a chill run down his spine at Maya's words. Whether her memories were real or not, the implications of what she was suggesting were staggering. If there truly was an advanced technological device hidden beneath the pyramid, and if it had been placed there deliberately as a gift to future generations, then they were potentially on the verge of a discovery that would revolutionize human understanding of ancient capabilities. "Maya," he said carefully, "if we find this entrance you're describing, and if we're able to access the chamber below, what do you think we'll find there?" Maya closed her eyes for a moment, as if trying to access memories that were becoming increasingly difficult to retrieve. "The machine is beautiful," she said finally. "It's made of the same stone as the pyramid, but it's carved with symbols that glow with their own light. And when it's working, it makes a sound like singing, like the stones themselves are happy." She opened her eyes and looked directly at Professor Torres. "But the most important thing isn't the machine itself. It's what the machine represents. The foreign builders said that the greatest technology isn't about making things or controlling things. It's about bringing people together, helping them work as one mind and one heart toward something greater than any individual could achieve alone." Dr. Chen, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement at her daughter's eloquence, stepped forward. "Maya, sweetheart, these are very grown-up ideas you're talking about. Are you sure you understand what you're saying?" Maya looked at her mother with an expression of infinite patience. "Mama, I know I'm just a little girl in this life, but Khayyam Waset understood these things, and sometimes I can still feel what he felt. He knew that the pyramid wasn't really about the pharaoh or about showing how powerful Egypt was. It was about proving that people could do impossible things when they believed in something bigger than themselves." The research team spent the next several hours using increasingly sophisticated scanning equipment to examine the section of the pyramid that Maya had indicated. Initially, their instruments detected nothing unusual. The stones appeared to be solid limestone blocks identical to all the others. But when they adjusted their scanners to look for density variations and internal structures, a different picture began to emerge. "There's definitely something here," announced Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the team's geological engineer. "The stones in this section have a slightly different internal structure than the surrounding blocks. It's subtle, but there are what appear to be mechanical joints and pivot points built into the stone itself." Maya, who had been watching the adults work with the patient interest of a child observing a complicated adult activity, suddenly stood up and walked directly to the pyramid wall. She placed her small hands on 3 specific stones, pressing them in a sequence that seemed random, but was clearly deliberate. Nothing happened. Maya frowned and tried again, this time pressing the stones in a different order. Still nothing. "It's not working," she said, sounding frustrated for the first time since they had arrived in Egypt. "I remember the pattern, but maybe the mechanism is stuck after all these years." Dr. Hassan approached the wall and examined the stones that Maya had been pressing. "These blocks do appear to be slightly different from the others," he admitted. "The surface texture is smoother, and there are what might be wear marks around the edges." Professor Torres studied Maya's face, noting the concentration and certainty with which she had approached the wall. "Maya, are you sure about the sequence? Could there be something else you need to do first?" Maya bit her lip, thinking hard. The foreign builders said something. They said the entrance would only open for someone who understood the true purpose of the pyramid. Maybe it's not just about pressing the right stones. Maybe you have to believe the right things. Dr. Vasquez found this statement particularly intriguing from a psychological standpoint. "Maya, what do you think someone would need to believe for the entrance to work?" "That the pyramid was built with love," Maya said without hesitation. "Not love for the pharaoh or love for power, but love for all the people who would come after us. Love for the future, for the idea that someday humanity would be wise enough to use the knowledge responsibly." She placed her hands on the stones again, but this time she closed her eyes and seemed to be concentrating on something beyond the physical mechanism. Kayem believed that every stone he carried was a gift to people he would never meet, people who would live thousands of years in the future. He believed that his work mattered, not because it would make him famous or rich, but because it would help those future people understand what was possible. As Maya spoke, something extraordinary happened. The stones beneath her hands began to emit a faint, warm glow, not bright enough to be obvious in the Egyptian sunlight, but clearly visible to the researchers who were watching closely. The glow spread from the 3 stones Maya was touching to adjacent blocks, creating a pattern that resembled the geometric designs she had drawn in her pictures of the mysterious machine. Dr. Hassan stepped back in amazement. "That's impossible. Limestone doesn't emit light." But even as he spoke, the glowing stones began to move. With a sound like distant thunder, a section of the pyramid wall approximately 2 meters wide and 3 meters tall slowly pivoted inward, revealing a passage that descended into darkness. The research team stood in stunned silence, staring at an entrance to the Great Pyramid that had been hidden for over 4,000 years. The passage beyond was clearly artificial, with smooth walls and a ceiling that disappeared into blackness. A faint breeze emerged from the opening, carrying with it the scent of ancient stone, and something else. Something that reminded Professor Torres of the smell of rain on desert sand. Maya opened her eyes and smiled with the satisfaction of a child who had successfully completed a difficult puzzle. "See? I told you it was there." Dr. Vasquez was the first to recover her voice. "Maya, how did you know to do that? How did you know that the stones would respond to whatever you just did?" Maya shrugged. Kayem knew. The foreign builders taught him that their technology wasn't just about machines and mechanisms. It was about intention, about the energy that people put into their work. They said that the pyramid would only reveal its secrets to people who approached it with the same spirit that built it. Professor Torres approached the entrance cautiously, shining a powerful flashlight into the passage. The beam revealed a corridor that descended at a gentle angle, with walls covered in hieroglyphic inscriptions that seemed to shimmer and move in the light. The hieroglyphs, Dr. Hassan breathed, moving closer to examine them. They're not painted or carved. They appear to be integral to the stone itself, as if they were formed when the blocks were created. Maya walked to the entrance and peered into the passage. The writing tells the story of the building, she said. It explains how the foreign builders came to Egypt and why they chose to help build the pyramid. And it gives instructions for anyone who finds this passage, warnings about what they'll encounter below. Dr. Chen felt a surge of maternal protectiveness. Maya, you're not going down there. It could be dangerous. But Maya was already shaking her head. I have to go, Mama. Kayamwaset needs to finish what he started. He needs to show people the heart of the pyramid so they can understand what it really means. Professor Torres looked at the assembled team, seeing his own mixture of excitement and apprehension reflected in their faces. They were standing at the threshold of what could be the greatest archaeological discovery in human history, but they were also about to follow a 5-year-old girl into a hidden chamber based on her claims of memories from a past life. We proceed together, he announced. No one goes anywhere alone, and we document everything. Maya, you can come with us, but you stay close to your mother at all times. As the team prepared their equipment for the descent, Maya stood at the entrance to the passage, looking into the darkness with an expression of profound anticipation. Kayamwaset is excited, she said quietly. He's been waiting so long to show someone the heart of the pyramid. He wants people to understand that the ancient world wasn't primitive or backward. The people who built this were just as smart and creative as people today. They just had different kinds of knowledge. The passage descended for nearly 50 meters, with the hieroglyphic inscriptions continuing along both walls. Dr. Hassan translated portions of the text as they walked, confirming Maya's assertion that the writings described the construction process and the purpose of the hidden chamber they were approaching. This is extraordinary, Dr. Hassan murmured as he read. The hieroglyphs describe engineering techniques that we're only beginning to understand today. Hydraulic systems, precision stone cutting, even what appears to be a form of acoustic levitation. Maya nodded matter-of-factly. The foreign builders knew how to use sound to make heavy things light. That's how they could move the biggest stones with just a few people. But they only used that technique for the most important blocks, the ones that had to be placed exactly right. As they descended deeper into the pyramid, the air grew cooler and seemed to take on an almost electric quality. The walls began to emit the same faint glow that the entrance stones had displayed, providing enough light to see by even without their flashlights. The stones are responding to our presence, Dr. Mitchell observed, running her hands along the glowing wall. It's as if the entire structure is some kind of massive technological system. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of walking through the glowing passage, they emerged into a vast circular chamber exactly as Maya had described in her drawings. The room was approximately 30 meters in diameter, with a domed ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. In the center of the chamber stood the machine that Maya had called the heart of the pyramid. It was unlike anything any of them had ever seen. The device appeared to be carved from a single piece of the same limestone as the pyramid itself, but it incorporated geometric patterns and mechanical elements that seemed to defy the limitations of ancient technology. Circular stone wheels nested within other wheels, all connected by a complex system of channels through which water still flowed after thousands of years. But the most remarkable thing about the machine was that it was still functioning. The stone wheels turned slowly and silently, driven by the flow of water through the channels, and the entire device emitted a soft, harmonious sound that was indeed like singing. Maya walked directly to the machine and placed her hands on its surface. The moment she made contact, the device's glow intensified, and the singing sound grew louder and more complex, as if the machine was responding to her presence. "Hello, old friend," Maya said softly. and for a moment her voice carried the weight and wisdom of someone far older than 5 years. I told them about you. I told them you were waiting. Stories like this connect us in ways we don't always understand. Show that you're here. Leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what else you'd like to discover. Maya's journey reminds us that knowledge transcends time, that the greatest achievements in human history were built not by kings or gods, but by ordinary people doing extraordinary things with love, dedication, and an unshakable belief in something greater than themselves. The heart of the pyramid still beats, waiting for humanity to remember that our greatest technology has always been our ability to work together toward a common dream.